Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we have a look at the 1959 horror film, A Bucket of Blood. This is episode 440. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead from Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can find at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Drew Edwards is born.
And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of the very busy, very, very in demand, and I'm telling you, because I peer into her office all the time, and she is fielding calls. Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello, Julia.
Hello, Julia.
Hello. All right. A Bucket of Blood. I've never seen this movie because the title was, it sounded so like Gut Bucket or any other, like it sounded really grotesque, and so I've never seen this film, and maybe it was the title. 1959 American comedy horror film directed by Roger Corman. It starred Dick Miller and was set in the West Coast beatnik culture of the late 1950s, which I love that. That is where it's at for me. Written by Charles B. Griffith. The film, produced on a $50,000 budget, is about a dim-witted, impressionable young, I think Young is doing a lot of work there, busboy at a Bohemian café who is acclaimed as a brilliant sculptor when he accidentally kills his landlady's cat, covers its body in clay to hide the evidence, and presents the result as a work of art. When he's pressured to create similar work, he becomes a serial killer. This is a first of a trio of collaborations between Corman and Charles B. Griffith. They were comedies, all. This one, Little Shop of Horrors, and Creature from the Haunted Sea. So that's what we got. We got serial killers. We got beatniks. We got beat poetry. I would love to get some opening thoughts, and then we'll go into topics. Julia, I'm dying to hear, what are your opening thoughts about A Bucket of Blood, 1959?
I have, mixed feelings about this one as well. I think given that it is a $50,000 5-day film, like made in 5 days film, it's quality is actually pretty good. It's pretty good looking in a lot of places. I like the crazy weird sculptures that are supposedly, dead people. I like the performances, the scores. I think probably the same. So much of this is the same as the film we did last week, which is the 50s. The Roger Corman Little Shop of Horrors. It's very similar. Very similar plot wise. They used the same sets. Well, this is first, and then they used the same sets in Little Shop of Horrors to a great extent that were used in this film. And so there's some really great things about it. I agree the title is terrible. It doesn't make any sense for this film. Like, there is technically a bucket of blood in the movie, but it's so not what the movie's about. I would have called it something like Dead Cat or something. I don't know. But so the film, the title actually did really make me not want to see the film at first. I was like, oh God, really? And then I was like, oh, okay, this is not what it's about. It's a clever concept. The character of the artist, Walter, is interesting. I think it's because they didn't have much time to do much with it. I guess the evolution of this character from just kind of nerdy wannabe artist busboy to serial killer or whatever slasher is not. I don't think it's well developed. I'm really curious to see apparently there's a 1995 remake with Anthony Michael Hall and Justine Bateman and a bunch of amazing people in the cast, like Will Ferrell and Jennifer Coolidge. I'm dying to see that and see if, given that they probably had a much bigger budget, what they end up doing with it. But it's definitely a fun watch.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right, Tony, what about you? What are your opening thoughts?
Yeah. It was Julia hit it on the head. It's the duo of nebbish protagonists doing, or I guess, yeah, doing bad things or doing wrong things.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I guess they're both villains in their own right, but they are the focus of the film. But it's funny, just they kind of play. It's very similar characters doing bad things. I mean, it's cool to be doing all these Corman movies. I still wonder every time I see a movie like this.
Hmm.
I wish that I had more context to. I wonder if actual beatniks were like, this damn movie. Like, really? Is it the same as like when metalheads are portrayed as fools, or like every surfer guy's the dumbest person ever on the face of the planet? And there's always there's a seed of truth in all of this. Like,
Mm.
I'm sure there are a lot of really obnoxious beatniks just by how they're portrayed. In there's got to be a grain of truth, but I do wish I knew, because man, oh man, do I not want to hang out with anybody in this film at all. Just annoying. Like, but not to steal his thunder, but Drew mentioned in our chat that this is carried forward in kind of the kind of some of the stuff we see and like we kind of think of as Austin or Portland or California, like when they're
Mhm.
naming off things
Hipsters.
like the
Yes.
hipster, like, oh, is that a this with sandwich with, like, they start naming all this stuff and I'm like, oh man, that sounds like some restaurants I've been at
Yeah.
in the past several years. So that's kind of funny. Not a super fantastic movie, but I think it's interesting, and I am really glad that we're doing Little Shop of Horrors and Bucket of Blood back to back,
Hmm.
because of the similarities and kind of how things play out, and it's interesting. And I like the cast overall, but boy, would it be I just in the same way I don't want to hang out at hipster bars. This beatnik, like hanging out in this beatnik place, would be just insufferable.
Yeah. No, I'll share some thoughts on that when. So, Drew, what about you? Like, you can pick that up, but what are your opening thoughts?
Well, I actually think that I have come around to not only I really like this movie, and I've always really liked it since I first saw it as a teenager. Oddly, as our resident gorehound, I was not put off by the title "A Bucket of Blood."
Sure.
And in fact, that's probably one of the reasons I rented it. But I think upon watching it in light of some recent events that I've been ruminating on, I like what this movie has to say about artistic hubris.
Yeah.
And getting too high up on yourself, but also how this is a great example when I talk about writing in either at like a panel or the times I've taught writing classes. I'm always very quick to talk about the difference between a hero and a protagonist. Walter Paisley in this movie is a great example of a protagonist that is not a hero. Like, he has traits that you can find sympathetic, and his first two initial kills are almost out of naivete. So you can, within the realm of a movie, you can kind of forgive them. But by the end of this movie, he has become so egotistical, he has become a cold-blooded killer. And I think there is value in that statement. And, again, maybe this is me conflating things, but like, I've been thinking a lot about the stuff that's in the news right now about Neil Gaiman. Not that he is a serial killer, mind you, but about how, and I'm not saying that this is the motivation for the things that he's being accused of, but about how talented people can sometimes behave really badly and think that they are entitled to that because of people's praise. Because that's really what happens with Walter. We see him go from this almost like innocent character to a cold-blooded killer within a course of an hour. And I really like that. Like, I like the stuff that this movie says, even as a creative who is prone to my own moments of egotism. Not that I have murderous skeletons in my closet, mind you, but this is I think something that is important for all of us as people in a creative medium who might be prone to being praised or booed or whatever, not to get too high on our own supply. And I think that I like this movie better than Little Shop of Horrors. Now seeing them back to back, first of all, I think Dick Miller is just a wonderful character actor, but I really, really like the stuff that this movie has to say. Like, this movie, especially on this most recent viewing, really spoke to me.
Yeah, I want to come back to that. I think, we can, as we go through the movie, I want to come back to those thoughts, because I have my own thoughts on some of that, because the similarities and differences in how I interpret it. So I think you're onto something there. I definitely do.
I actually think it would be cool to start with, let's talk about Dick Miller as Walter Paisley in the context of this world of artists, because
first of all, I do have a question about that. How old is he here?
He's actually 31,
so
and I
would say he is young.
I guess he's young, but for 31, he looks great for 50. I mean,
I think you were doing him a disservice.
That's not fair.
I think you were doing him a disservice. He is.
I think he does look older than 31.
He doesn't look 31.
He looks old to be a busboy, but I don't think.
But the thing is that he's kind of dim-witted, like we said. So the fact that he's a busboy makes a lot of sense, because
it's fine. I'm just saying, if I went out to went over to the University of Colorado today, looked around for a 30-year-old grad student, he would look nothing like Dick Miller in this movie.
Well, anyway, that doesn't matter.
I don't think. I
think 31 looks different. It's possible that 31 looks different in 2024 than it did in 19.
Well, we all look different than we did back then, but like, people are literally taller than they were in the 20th century. So we're full of hormones, man. That's why we need more Reacher.
What Drew's saying about the how he starts out, the character starts out accidentally. Like, he's totally meaning well when he kills the cat. He's trying to rescue the cat from the wall, and he accidentally stabs it when he's trying to break the wall open. So that's completely naive. And then he never actually says any lies when he's talking about the cat. When he brings in the art, he's like, it's called Dead Cat. It's like, why is there a knife in it? Because I accidentally put a knife in it.
I think this is actually a funnier script, in fact, than Little Shop, because there's so many double entendres and like hidden meanings and everything. It's really slick, and I really admired that. But the thing I wanted to,
the praise goes to his head. I just wanted
to
close out.
But what I was thinking about was, as likable as, and let's set aside when he becomes a stone cold serial killer, as likable as he is, what he's doing, what this is about, I thought this was extremely timely, because the way that he is desperate to become an artist reminds me a lot of the AI conversation that we're having, where it occurs that was the first thought that came into my mind when I looked at this, when I go, he realizes he's got a trick he can use, and he can use it to make himself an artist, because he believes that that's going to bring him all kinds of goodness in the world, and it does, by the way. I mean, but
although it doesn't get him everything that he wants.
Doesn't get him everything. And it's also, this is a slightly unfair comparison, because in fact what he's doing is art. I mean, he's taking this found art and then he's shellacking it with sculpture.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he covered roadkill with clay, there probably would have been a population of people who would have appreciated his art, and he wouldn't have to go to jail for it.
But we'll set aside that it's actually pretty brilliant, and I wanted to play for a moment with the fact that he's giving into a weird kind of sin, which is that he wants to cheat his way to being an artist. And I thought this is like a key thing that people are concerned about today. Like, if you go on threads, like, what are people complaining about? And they're complaining about they'll say something like, I'm an illustrator, I do book covers, and I'm really worried about so many people wanting to just become an AI illustrator or use an AI illustrator instead of hiring someone.
For him, I mean, one of the main differences is he's made these sculptures, but he's not taken millions of people's livelihood of sculptures and turned them into something. That's the biggest.
No,
that's
he's
the
just
AI.
He's just literally putting a pancake pan through somebody's
But there's
skull.
there's a lot actually to there. I think that's I think that's fascinating. I think there are some mirrors, but there's several things going on, because his naivete is that he wants to fit in so bad. He's been treated so badly, that it's also sad that this group of people that he wants to fit in so badly treat him so poorly, and yet he still wants to be part of them, because he sees that as like that's the scene he enjoys, and he wants to be around them. Now specifically, he wants to win the graces of a girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's his main goal. But for a long time, even afterwards, there's a deeper dichotomy, because this actually kind of layered, is even when people enjoy his art, there's still a, will he ever be accepted in this group who's catty and out for themselves, and like there's still a faction that's like, you're not a real artist, or like you're still that busboy guy, and he'll never perhaps break out of that, even if he had not been a cold-blooded killer eventually.
Yeah.
There's a chance that he would have never quite fit in, and there's a lot of movies to deal with this. Are you an artist or are you not? And how do you break in, and is it all a sham anyway?
Yeah.
Is it a bunch of artists who are so full of themselves that you'll always be nouveau artist until it's advantageous for them to let you in?
Yeah.
Because they want a piece of you.
I felt very sorry for him that way.
Yeah,
he's too naive to really understand.
Well, there is gatekeeping involved, which is something that people throw around a lot in the AI conversation, whether it's warranted or not.
Usually it's not.
It's a bit of a different situation when you're talking about something that could affect someone's livelihood.
Difference is he didn't steal. Yeah. He didn't steal several generations of art to do what he did. Now he's a killer. But also the other part of it is he falls into the trap that we've seen several times, where people start doing bad things because their circumstances. Like, you have several different choices when you get famous, right? You can pay it back.
Yeah.
You can just kind of go for it. Or some people get so full of like, I am now famous, that then the fame of it all becomes their persona, and they treat people badly because they get away with it. And you have this turn of like, I've seen it so often where like the nerds of a scene become the jocks of one scene, become the jocks of that other scene. As far as I'm definitely using this is very basic level,
high school
to mix your pop culture metaphors, sure. But
it's kind of how, like, there's a power dynamic there, and it's always frustrated me because a lot of people who bought into that were bullied, right? Or seen as like, if only I could, if I just had that, I could get, in high school parlance, like, I could get the cheerleader, I could do this. And then when they gain that modicum of power, they become all those people that they hated. But letting go of that and actually doing the right thing and going, whoa, this is not, I mean, Jason, you and I think we've talked about several times, we always went with that like flipped and folded metaphor, like where you get to, like, you look at somebody who's powerful.
For the listener, I just want to explain that. Julia Phillips, you'll never eat lunch in this town again. She talks about Don Simpson, who was a producer, insisted on having his blue jeans fluffed and folded. And he insisted that he never wore the same jeans more than a couple times, and they must be fluffed and folded and never creased or ironed or pressed.
Right.
And so once when he sent them out and they were not handled properly, he demanded that the whole staff be lined up in front of him, and he shook jeans in their faces and yelled, "Fluffed and folded, fluffed and folded."
So so that dynamic where you are this, and now he may have been a jock the whole time or whatever, in that same idea. But like the idea that you would berate, and I've actually been in a meeting, I got berated by the head of Origin Software because we didn't find a bug that was impossible to find because they didn't give us enough equipment to find the bug. Yeah. But because he deemed that it was our fault, and it was last minute before it was shipping a game, he decided to call us all in like the Downfall movie and berate us and our managers that we didn't find this bug that was their fault for not doing it. So anytime that I kind of feel like I get a little high on my horse, I just try to remember this whole idea of like, would you want to be the person who's yelled? Like, there was no reason to yell at them, right? So a lot of times, like he falls it. The reason he's been so abused, and it's part of the cycle of abuse as well. Like this character has been so abused throughout his, just when we see him, who knows? I mean, I don't think the idea is that you don't become this nebbish kind of guy without history, right?
There is a phrase that Jamie taught me. I'm pretty sure it didn't originate with her, but I think it works for this character. Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
this is a person that's in pain, and the only way that he found to go up is by inflicting his pain on other people. And I mean, there's some evidence that he's already unbalanced. I mean,
Sure.
like he already has a picture of the girl that he has a crush on in his apartment, like she's his girlfriend, before, there's any evidence of there being any kind of romantic tension whatsoever. So, like, obviously Walter might not just be like nebbish and naive. Like this might be a guy that from frame one is like, we don't ever really get an idea of what his history is. He might have been released from a mental institution like 6 months to the start of this movie. Like he
may very well have been released from jail. I think you're looking at just a regular guy who's a little on the violent side and kind of dumb is probably.
Yeah, just like I think he off the feeling of a damaged person, and that's kind of why at first you're like, oh, now me as a cat lover, he kills a cat instantly, and the probably one like, dude, that's not the way to do that. But I mean, we don't have the movie if he doesn't do that, right? So, but it's still just like, no.
I think it's important to note though that he starts with an animal. Like they don't immediately begin with him putting his pancake pan through a human being's skull.
And the animal's completely an accident, whereas the guy is him freaking out that he's going to get shot because he's being unjustly accused of having drugs that he didn't know.
By the way, I want to mention before. Well, actually, that would be his next act. So he introduces the cat sculpture, and people will dig it. And so his boss is like, "All right, don't be a busboy anymore. Go work on more art."
But before he kills this cat, the cat's trapped in the wall. He kills it by accident because he's gonna open the wall with a knife, which is the one that's like, no, don't do that, man. Yeah. But we do catch his frustration because he just wants to fit in. So he's got all this clay, and he's just willing. Why won't you be a nose? Like, why won't you, my chosen medium, bend to my will? And let me tell you, I know my strengths as an artist.
Yeah.
And I've often done paintings and drawings and stuff where I understand, why won't you be a nose?
Like, yeah, I know exactly. Yeah. Why won't you be a nose is exactly something I identified with as well.
I get it. Yeah. Like because I also know a lot of really talented artists, and when you compare them, and he's in this, I don't know how talented some of the artists in there, and they're all kind of high on their supplies, as Drew put it. But like, he just wants to be there, and he thinks he can do it, and that is frustrating. But you have to put in the time, and you also have to be in the right mindset to learn in that way, right? Especially learning on your own. Yeah. And so I think that's the segue of like so coming from this frustration of wanting to fit in and also wanting to be an artist so badly that when he commits this crime of accidental crime, and then people take notice of like, hey, this is the way I made my art. Like I think Drew is I think Julia, like there's probably is an artist who could cover roadkill already killed, like you might kill an animal, but like, no, that's my art, is I shellacked this thing or did this, like, oh, whoa, that's saying something about the evils of
in theory that could have been.
There's people who make trash art. Yeah, there's people who make trash art.
Yeah, you can have found art as a thing. You could go to a museum and see a column with a spork on the column, and you're asked to think about plastic, I suppose. Right. So he could, in a better world that was less horrific than this, he could have actually explained what he was doing, and a lot of it would have been cleared up.
Well, I mean, there's people that still collect taxidermy.
Right, exactly.
Although the idea of using corpses as art is not new to this, nor did it end with this, because you have like the original House of Wax.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Or was that after this? I don't know. Well, anyway, that's a remake.
No. The original House of Wax was way before this. It was in the
And then
it was like
there's
53.
and
So
then
it's
but
not
there's
way
also
before.
Mystery of the Wax Museum. So
but in real life, we have the art or us museum stuff where they, you know, have made visible humans, like, you know, they pump preservatives and plastic, basically, so you have a plastic person on display. I mean, it's not outside the realm of just reality.
Oh, yeah. Right? No, you're exactly right. That's right.
What I think is so great about this script, though, is he so often with scripts where you have a character that is, again, a protagonist, not a hero, they still make the mistake of making the character too cool. Like it's the Breaking Bad problem. Like Walter White is not supposed to be a character people root for, but he gets all the best lines, so it's kind of hard not to. This movie
I actually
does
think
not
that
fall
they
in
do want you to accidentally slide into rooting for him. I think
well,
in that
either
case,
way, this movie does not
but
fall
not
into that
here,
trap.
right?
He is pathetic.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really smart choice.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It doesn't go away. And his attempts to be cool are equally pathetic. He
becomes a caricature when he puts on the beatnik clothes.
Oh my God, his costume just drives me crazy. He starts wearing this weird, like the beret and he's got a cigarette holder and like this long scarf.
If we're going to talk about that, we have to get into the whole scene of the bar.
Well, that's when, after he becomes a celebrated sculptor, he walks in. The next time he walks in, he sort of flounces in wearing this long striped shirt and a long scarf and with a beret. He's got a whole beatnik outfit that he's bought. But
I don't think his outfit is that much dumber than a lot of the people who are there.
I disagree. I actually feel like he looks dated in a way. Like it's like I was saying earlier in our thread. I feel like that a lot of the outfits in this still look like stuff I could see on people in Austin, whereas his stuff,
no doubt, yeah,
his stuff does lock him into this time period in a way.
I think it's funny that Bert Convy, who plays an undercover police officer, when we first saw him, I thought, well, that's a kind of a realistic note because Bert Convy is there. By the way, Bert Convy was a guy who I saw on everything when I was growing up. But he's a total square. He's wearing chinos and a sweater over a shirt, you know. But it turns out he's an undercover police officer, which is hilarious. He's an undercover police officer, didn't even bother to like try to fit in, you know.
His partner is dressed like a cowboy for some reason.
His partner is dressed like a cowboy.
Like a beatnik cowboy. That's the thing. He's like scruffy, terrible beatnik cowboy.
So I just want to mention these two undercover police officers. And by the way, I wrote 2 books which take place at a beatnik cafe in 1959. Okay, so this is the world that I've been writing about, and I've got undercover police officers as well, but I never bothered to explain what they were wearing. But I just think it's hilarious, these two guys. The other one is played by Ed Nelson, who is a man that I have watched hundreds and hundreds of hours of because he plays the handsome Dr. Rossi on Peyton Place, and I've seen the first 300 or so episodes of that show. So it's that voice. Whenever I hear him dubbing a foreign language film from the 60s, it's like, there's Ed Nelson. Anyway, yes, here he plays an undercover cop for some reason dressed like a beatnik cowboy, which is awesome. It's Bert Convy who follows Walter Paisley home, and the reason he does it has nothing to do with this dead cat sculpture, which is the only sculpture that Paisley has done at that point. It's because this girl who has suddenly developed a crush on Walter Paisley slips
him some heroin.
But I do want to talk for a moment about the girl hitting on him at the door. It's such an interesting moment how she's like really coming onto him is too simple a way to put it. She is completely just absorbed by him, and she's like, what can I do for you? What can I do to be part of your world? And he doesn't even have anything to ask for. He doesn't want her. He wants this other girl. He doesn't. And it's so funny that this is part of the stardom that he kind of hoped for, and he doesn't even have any plans for it. I mean, I thought that was really
Well, he doesn't even understand what she's giving him.
Right.
Like,
that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true. I wouldn't
which
either, to be fair,
yeah,
if
which
like, but
well, like it does make what it does accomplish is it makes the cop less sympathetic because it feels like he's being like the cop sees her slip it on him, and instead of going after her, he
yeah.
goes after him.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
it
That's
it,
true.
it seems like the cop is kind of being mean spirited and picking on this guy that's not very bright. And
Yeah.
so you don't really feel bad when a guy that's like waving his gun around and everything, like within the realm of movie logic anyway. Not that this would be okay in real life, but within movie logic, you don't feel too bad when he gets brained in the skull with a pancake pan.
Right.
Well,
It's
he's also taking advantage. Like just a small amount of reflection he would realize like this guy is not well.
Yeah.
Right. So but he's trying to leverage instead of going, well, okay, well, hey, why don't we strike a deal and you help me catch everybody else in like a real way, like a let's diffuse this way. He pulls a gun instead. He goes the opposite way. But it's not, if he was a better cop, he would go, whoa, this guy, like, oh my God, this guy really doesn't understand what he was given. He's just
Well, and
well,
he's
I think
not
he's
right.
lazy. I think he's lazy. I think he just wants to make an arrest.
He wants the
Yeah,
score of his own.
he's terrible.
And we've seen enough like true crime stuff. There was the Netflix one about the guy who was clearly a fairly low IQ young man working at a junkyard who, after a couple of days worth of interrogation, was finally convinced to
No, it
give up
happens
full.
every day that people who are in any way have diminished IQ, or like low IQ or any kind of disability, will get arrested, beaten, killed by cops. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And so that was very realistic to me, that the cop would be like, take it up with the whoever, like
Yeah,
whatever he says, like it's like you could tell them that when you get to
you're
the
in the
station.
system now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's awful. So he gets bashed in the skull with a big old frying pan. The frying pan doesn't look necessarily heavy enough, but I'm telling you, some like heavy ass frying pans you could absolutely split somebody's skull with if you
Oh, I mean, I have iron skillets. That thing is no joke.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, if
Yeah,
you go off the
There's a reason why the
sculpture,
frying
it cleaves
pan
his head
trope.
almost like an axe.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, it does.
The
Yeah,
frying pan trope is a thing for a reason, because the true cast iron skillet is a weapon not to be trifled
it's
with.
essentially an axe. Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. Julia was telling you guys. I remember one night when our alarm went off in the middle of the night, and and it was going off downstairs. So, like, my first thought was iron skillet. That was absolutely what I grabbed and brought with me. Yeah,
The thing that's interesting about this murder though versus like what occurs is like there's so much more deliberate brutality later on. Like he saws a
yeah.
guy's head off and he
Oh, absolutely.
strangles somebody.
And that's what I was saying by that I didn't believe the evolution of the character, because it didn't make sense to me that he just goes from, oh, whoops, I accidentally killed someone, to now I'm gonna saw somebody's head. I mean, it was
He's
so
worried
vague.
about losing the attention,
Yeah.
Yeah, but
in a
I just didn't
movie
buy it.
that's a bit of a farce. That works for me.
I think it's interesting that the girl who's the she charges $25 to be a model, and she's mean, and so he's talking to her and she goes, maybe I could be one of your models, and he says, I'm considering it, and that was funny. I mean, that was funnier than Walter Paisley actually typically would be. That was a funny
Mhm.
line. So but from that moment he's thinking, there's a really good chance that I'm going to make a sculpture out of you, and pretty soon that's exactly what happens.
Well, it's also her extremely deliberate, constantly needling of him. Like I mean,
Yeah,
nobody in the bar likes her either. Like she's just mean
that's
and
true.
kind of terrible. And so
Yes.
everybody, like, she's got a rep. As soon as she comes in, everyone's like, oh crap. Like there's a bunch of dialogue to that effect.
Yeah.
So the turning point is like, had she just been kind of flippant, but she really lays, like, she needles him. And not that not that she deserved to die or anything, but that's why he justifies it by, you're just mean. You're a mean person. Like, I'm not gonna feel bad. Like, I want to get the good person, and you're mean and terrible. He doesn't see it the same way everybody else does. Like, because he's so centered in his kind of world that he just sees it as, well, you're mean to me. Like, I don't like this at all. Like, why are you continuing? Like, why are you doing this to me? Kind of outside of the realm of, like, everybody knows she's terrible, right? And that's really the turning point.
There's a point where he drives her away, and the other beatniks are like, "Wow, you did one really good thing, Walter, and that's that you got her to leave." Which, yeah.
Right.
But I also like that she's dressed like a Roger Corman bad girl. I think that was pretty cool. Like, we've now seen a couple of movies of his, and we can see what Roger Corman thinks a bad girl looks like, and it looks like this girl. There's a certain kind of skirt and a certain kind of blouse that says "bad girl" in a Roger Corman movie.
And apparently,
I think in that era a little
in
bit too.
In Crybaby,
yes,
it looks a lot like one of the characters.
Yeah, that's the visual vocabulary that we pick. There's this book that my son and I joke about all the time, and it was called like something like Sex and Love for Teenagers or something, and it was put out by the Y back in the 50s, and it has a dangerous girl on the cover. And she's got a scarf around her neck, and you know she means business. I mean, like there's just like, yeah.
Well, it's the same as all the posters, like, "Hey soldiers, watch out for bad girls," like, when you're overseas. And there's a look, and there's an expression, and a scarf around the neck is also involved more often than not. That
is so hilarious to me. Oh my gosh. I like that there's these two. One thing that's great about this script is there's these two guys. I don't even know what their names are. It doesn't matter. They could be Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. But there's a couple extra beatniks who do nothing but just crack wise through the whole movie. And they're just there to like pad the time out and say funny. They're great. I love them. And I'm like, boy, next time I write a script, I'm throwing in two guys like this who are just there to say funny stuff.
I am kind of in awe because as a rule, as we talked about a lot, you're not a traditional slapstick. Like, slapstick is not the thing that you like.
That's
the
true.
fact that you're so enamored by these guys whose shtick is so laser of the time and broad.
I don't even remember a physicality to them.
Well, as
not slapstick, but their whole deal. Yeah.
As we've established, though, Jason doesn't mind broad comedy as long as it's from a different time period.
There you go.
That almost makes that does make no sense, but it's my fault because I'm
I usually like what you like.
You like what you like.
Yeah. I'm not. It's fascinating to me as a friend, as a fellow podcaster, that usually like, that was just the nails on a chalkboard, and these guys, who were to me just like, okay, sure. I mean, I get it. You're of this time period. Fine. Are like, well, I love these guys, and I would write them. And I'm like, wait a second. I would never want this.
How do you feel about Maynard from Dobie Gillis? Because that's what they reminded me of.
You're right. These characters are like lifted from Dobie, as Maynard would say.
I mean, most of the people kind of sort of are.
Although apparently Roger Corman did spend some time in actual beatnik coffee bars while writing.
He said a lot of his friends were part of that scene. He said, not me. Like, he was always a square.
He went on purpose to do reconnaissance for this.
I still like that, and that's why I would love to know, how is this like close enough, or is it like where you see other
I like I said, I feel like this still resonates. Like, I feel like these could be hipsters now. Like, we don't call them beatniks anymore, but these kinds of people are. And look, somebody might think we're hipsters, like because we're doing a podcast about a mid-century black and white horror film. So
sort of. I mean, anything's possible. It's always fascinating.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, before we all fall into Walter Paisley's hubris and get too high on our own supply,
Can I ask a
maybe
question about this?
sure.
I have a question. Something that just triggered. You said and it's a mid-century movie, and it's black and white. And I got no problem with black and white. I love black and white movies. But there is a colorized version. Are you guys purists who are like totally against colorized, or is it okay sometimes, or like what are
I would
your
have watched it if it was the only version that I could find.
right?
I
Um,
think the version I saw was, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I saw the colorized one that was on, because it was on. You had a choice of Amazon or Tubi, and I think I watched the colorized one just because I didn't want to watch commercials at the time.
I watched the black and white one on Tubi, but I noticed the colorized
Oh,
one is on YouTube as well.
oh yeah, because I watched it on Amazon. And it's really weird because the night scenes that are definitely like more outside
Yeah,
have a strange flicker in the color.
no kidding.
And I was pretty sure, I was like, yeah, oh yeah, this is the colorized version. But by
Hmm.
then I didn't want to switch over. But
I will say this, Jason.
Mm.
I have never seen a movie that was supposed to be in black and white that was greatly enhanced about and being colorized later on.
I'm with
Like
you there.
the example being, of course, very famously they colorized King Kong in the
Mm.
80s. And even as a little kid, when you gave me the choice of watching the colorized version or the black and white version, I inevitably chose the black and white version because it I don't know, it looked better to my young eyes.
Well, that makes
So,
sense.
you know,
And
may
clearly, color. Look, I mean, we're not purists as far as not liking color because, like, Forbidden Planet, God knows, makes wonderful
beautiful,
use of color at the
beautiful.
same time. But yeah, 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 yeah.
I
There is
think
a
there is like a weird home movie quality that the black and white adds to this that I
mm,
like. And I feel that same way about Little Shop of Horrors. Like
mm.
these two movies do very much feel like you're watching because like the locations are limited, the casts aren't that big. Like it feels very much like you're watching a play.
Mm.
And I think in a way the black and white fits that for some
I
reason.
felt like the last movie, I felt like Little Shop felt more like a stage play to me than this movie. And I don't know, which is funny because that Little Shop actually goes out onto locations a lot more and uses that tire yard, for instance, really memorably. But I felt like with all the people coming and going in the flower shop, there was more of a stage play feel. But I wonder if I'm poisoned that way because, of course, I've seen stage play versions of Little Shop. So that's tough. I don't know. Anyway, back to where we are in the film because we're not really actually circling our way through scene by scene. But after he kills the good girl, I mean the bad girl, so called, he makes a seated statue of her. And his next kill after that, I don't remember why it happens, but it's the grisliest kill that he does, and it's where he just sets
At
out to
this point,
go.
he just wants because they decide they're gonna do
Oh, a
the
show.
guy. Okay, so the boss guy, the guy who owns the restaurant is the same is similar to the guy who owns
Yeah, he's the
the little
Mr.
shop of horrors.
Mushnik character of
He
this movie.
Yeah, he is has figured out because he figured it out pretty early because he saw the fur on the cat that he's covering dead bodies. But so he's kind of like rather than report him to the police or anything, he's just kind of like maybe just don't make any more sculptures. Let's just don't. And we shouldn't display this dead man one that you made. We shouldn't do that because really we need we'll wait till you have like stuff that we can do a whole show with like all your but not right now, like no hurry. And it's just the weirdest way of approaching like not wanting him to kill any more people but also not wanting him to get arrested for some reason because benefiting financially because
Yeah.
he's getting in on the sale deal. So then when he does kill people he's like, well, okay, let's do a show. So that's what he decides. So like, I want to do a show but I want to do it now. And so he's going to go kill somebody else so that he can have enough art to do a show.
Yes. Yeah. So, and he ends up attacking and killing a guy with a table saw. Like, holy shit. Like that is quite the escalation, Mr. Paisley, from, mere. I mean, it still takes a lot of effort to strangle the life out of a person, but now he's actually going to cut somebody's head off with a table saw and then make a bust sculpture.
It is the most overtly gory, but I do think I'm most disturbed by the strangulation because there is a kind of an undercurrent of misogyny there that is not obviously present in the
Especially because she's
decapitation.
nude. Yeah.
Exactly.
I
Like it
totally forgot about that.
feels
You're right. Yeah.
it feels so much more, and because he's angry because she's not kissing his ass like everybody else,
Yeah.
and
Right.
so like it's at that point that you start to lose sympathy for this guy. And again, that's what I do like about this script. Like I feel like it does, again, I've seen other movies which are perhaps better in some technical ways, try to accomplish the same kind of thing about having a protagonist that has villainous traits. But I don't think many, and maybe some of it is also just that Dick Miller was able to oscillate all the things going on with this character a lot better. And obviously it didn't work for Julia as well as it worked for me. But I don't know. Like I think that this movie to me gets the sort of entitlement of a creative that has gone off the rails and like, look, we've all been there to varying degrees, obviously not to homicidal levels, but like there has definitely been points where I have just done a panel and it's like, let's say it was a packed room, and I'm really believing my own hype in that point. And at that point, like my ego is probably so big that perhaps I have become a little bit obnoxious. Again, that's a minor crime compared to anything in this movie.
I've seen you command very, very large rooms, and I don't think you're obnoxious. I've never seen you become obnoxious.
But my point being is that this is a maybe not.
Yeah, no, I
becoming a
hear you. That's
homicidal
part of
maniac.
the value is
Yeah.
thinking about it like, am I becoming obnoxious? That's a good question.
Or am I becoming, a monster because I'm believing my own hype too much? And I think that there's value in that. That Corman has given us something to ruminate on. So as creatives, maybe we don't become our worst selves. Like we don't become Walter Paisley.
Yeah, that's something I try to, and I've also seen it at cons where I deal with somebody and somebody goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry about this and that," and I'm like, "That's not a big deal. Like, you're a guest," and I reflect and go, "Holy crap! What has this person dealt with?
Yeah.
What terrible person has this person dealt with? They have to apologize for just like, no, this is fine. Like, no, don't worry about any of this. You're great. This con's great. Or we don't have this in a green room," and I'm like, but it makes me go, wow, what? I am so sorry that sometime in the past this person has to deal with somebody who was legitimately mad about something, or just treated them badly, or like was just that terrible, had that much of an ego that somebody has to apologize for
You remember
something that's inconsequential.
the guy in Spinal Tap, Nigel Tufnell in Spinal Tap, complaining about like the pigs in blankets that he feels like the crackers are the
Well,
wrong
I
size.
definitely know those people. I mean, I've been at dinner with a person who sent a water glass back because it had spots on it. So I know that. I
Man,
know that
I had
whole.
I had a boss that would like he waited too long for water, and I was just like, I don't want them to spit in all of our food. Can you please? Like, I was just like,
Exactly.
just putting my hands in my head, just my head in my hands, going, no, don't.
Yeah.
Because none of that. It's not a big deal. It's so not a big deal.
Well, life actually does seem to go nicer if you're trying to get through your day assuming that everybody means pretty well,
Yeah, just I mean, there's some people who are truly terrible and you can dismiss them, but like just trying to be like, I just get sad when I realize like somebody's had to deal with a bunch of people who are just that terrible and bad. And I think that's what I always try to remember is, everybody's having their own struggle. Even if I get like kind of sometimes every once in a while you get crappy service, and then my whole thing is going, you know what? if you're getting crappy service at a place, that, especially if it relies on tips, that means that person's past
Yeah.
the point where they care.
Well, I
And
heard
you just
something really
why don't we
good.
just be nice? Like that you at that point you should go, you know what? I'm just gonna just try to be cool for
Right.
the rest of the time.
If that's a really really good point, and somebody told me this years ago, and this woman was a judge actually, and she said this was at some writing dinner I was at, but she said that anybody you run into, some person checking you into a hotel who's an asshole, they're that day a person cuts you off in traffic, but a bad waiter that day, their mom could have died. They could
Anything, yeah.
just found out, they could be having the worst day of their life, and you don't know. And the funny thing is, it could be true for literally everybody, everybody. And and if you just think about that, and then suddenly it's just not as pressing that you are a jerk back to them.
Yeah.
And I've found that it can be really, really valuable to go, "Are you okay?"
Right,
If
right.
like if somebody is a jerk to you, go, how are you okay? How are you doing?
The problem
Yeah.
is when you, and this is, we're getting way off the topic, but the problem is when you react, like for example, in road rage, you don't stop when somebody cuts you off. You don't stop to go, well, I wonder if they're having a bad, you just go,
Yeah.
fuck you, whatever. Um,
Which I've been
so,
known to do, by the way. I absolutely am terrible with this. Yes.
Oh man,
So
I had a person throw something at me. Like I pulled into the lane, totally had time, but they were just going way too fast, and somehow it was my fault. I actually throw something from the driver's side through the passenger side window and hit my car.
gracious.
Luckily they didn't have a gun. That was on 35 here in
Wow,
Austin.
that's
So like
horrible.
but
it was
we
real,
should
like it was a whole thing.
we
But
should
yeah,
get
but
back.
like back to the thing, like we see this broken person gain notoriety. By the way, also, we have talked about the guy who's going to sell his paintings, the manager guy, and it's weird too because even he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure everything's under these statues is dead, but I don't. I can't go so far as to call the cops on him because I still might make some money.
Yeah, that
And
seems
if
to be
that's not still
the
relevant to, terrible rich people or
and
people who
that's
want to make
played
money off
less
things,
broadly
that's
than
like,
it was.
ooh,
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah.
Well, in that respect, he is a lot like Mushnick.
Yes.
Like
right, right.
he's essentially the same character with a different coat of paint on him, but his motivations are largely the same.
I think
And
it's clearer with Mushnick. It's played kind of more. It's funnier with Mushnick, but it's also clearer with Mushnick the way that Mushnick is operating. But
well,
yeah, I mean,
Mushnick is a broader character because he's played as a stereotype,
yes,
which
right. That's
in
absolutely right.
some ways is kind of unfortunate, but
But I want to get to the very end because the movie wraps up pretty quickly. But I do have a question. You have this guy who's the sort of the superstar beatnik of the club, who's always reading.
Yes, poet.
It's his name is Max, and he's always reading poetry, and he talks in this highfalutin way, and he never lets up whether at his pad where they have a party later or at the club. And I always wonder about this guy, like, how do you get under that shell? Like, how do you get to Max? Can you drop the act for a second? Can you talk to me like a person? Because there's no, like, he's putting on
No,
this thing, and
no,
you have to
you
wonder, like,
can't.
where is, like,
But we've
who.
met those people too. Like we've
Yeah,
definitely
man, I know
met.
those people.
Yeah,
Like,
we've definitely met the people who just are always kind of in this and putting on what we would call putting on airs, but they're just always in this place, or they're always being artistic, or whatever it is. That's just that's who he is right now. But he's the part of the problem because he's the one who writes the poem about Walter that makes one of the reasons Walter's like, I really like this whole being the center of the universe thing, and I need to keep it going, is
Yeah,
because he writes that poem about it.
yeah, but
my
it's
I
such.
mean, if I had to pay, if I was just in, if I was in the real world and I saw this guy and went to one of these parties and saw that he was always on this way that he's on, and had the place, had the house and the people that are coming and going all the time, my guess is that he he inherited some wealth, decided to be a beat guy, and it's just like he was rich already, and I've seen that so many times. Like, no man, I'm anti-establishment. Like, all of your money is establishment. What are you talking about?
You're a
Like,
trust
don't
fund
give me
baby.
that shit.
What are you
Like,
talking about?
like,
You're
come on.
living
I
off of the
know
interest
where
of
your
your
money's
money.
from. Don't give me this BS. Like, that's the impression, and you can be wrong. I mean, you know, he's a self-made person, but in the beatnik culture that he's in, it's not cool to like money, man. You know,
Yeah.
guilty
Somebody's
lucre,
paying the
man.
property taxes on that house. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know how. Maybe
like
they
you don't just
passed
have a
the
gathering
beret.
house like that because it's relatively swanky. It's not a punk
Yeah,
squat house, right?
right. Like Sid and Nancy would live in. Yeah, where they just
Yeah, I
found
mean,
abandoned houses. Yeah,
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 there's a bunch of examples of that. But, like, it's not, yeah,
yeah. I
it's
mean,
not that.
the CBGB's guys, those kids were literally living in crash pads that were just abandoned. You know, they were like one step above on the streets, and that's not what's happening with these kids. But
Well,
yeah, okay.
also maybe that this is where Roger Corman could film.
Well, that's true. That's very true. Uh, so anyway, the way the movie wraps up is very rapid because the girl that he likes, which is Carla. So Carla is at the show of the sculpture, and which is going on, and then she gets a close look at the nude statue and realizes that some of the clay has come off of one of the fingertips, and that basically the whole secret spills instantly at that moment.
Well, she
And
notices it and starts to just take off, and he's like, "Where are you going?" And she's like, I know that there's a body under there," and then she runs away, which is the dumbest possible move because there's all these
yes,
people in that room, but she's gonna go run down this apparently completely abandoned city streets.
yeah,
And so he takes after her, but meanwhile, other people at the party also notice the same thing she noticed. So they're all like, "Oh shit, he's a murderer!" And so now
yes,
it's on, and he goes. One of the guys goes out, and the guy who's always is always stoned, he's like one of my favorite, the one the Guildenstern and Rosencrantz, whatever characters. He goes, "Oh yeah, he took off and he was chasing, whatever the girl's name is." Uh, so they all run off after him, but this guy is just kind of hanging out.
yeah,
So that's how it all gets into the
yeah.
last
We
act, I
we
guess.
get into we get into a chase, and then very quickly, I hate to reveal this, but we're a spoiler show, so Walter decides to hang himself. Like, what a strange finish to this. What is? I mean, I understand, and also it's what happens. So as Quentin
I thought it
Tarantino
would have
said,
been
it is what it
slightly
is.
more interesting if he would have asphyxiated himself by covering himself
I
in
thought,
clay.
I thought he said I was
I
gonna, I thought he would cover himself in clay. Yes,
I think
but
it was
no.
merely just to keep it like where they didn't have to do it because he has like some clay on his face.
Uh,
But it's not like I thought the same thing. I think it was this like that.
it could be that
It
that would
couldn't
have been
happen quickly
too.
enough in the way they were
Yeah,
escalating. By the
yeah.
way, to go back to our previous thing, if you want to see the punk version of all of that, the movie Suburbia
Hmm.
is full of scenes with squatter house punks and kind of what that's
I haven't
about.
seen it,
So,
so okay.
oh yeah, it's I think if I'm not mistaken, Flea is in
Hmm.
Suburbia, but that's what it reminded me of, like going from different subcultures, the kind of hangout flat, it's a
Yeah.
totally different thing than the beatnik come and be cool and be seen.
Are you talking? You're not talking about the 1996 one, or by Richard Linklater? Or are you talking about the 1984 one?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, all
the
right, good
84,
to know.
like it would be the 80s one because that would be 83. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I will make a note of it, and I will watch it. So that brings us to the end of Walter Paisley and a Bucket of Blood. So what have we
Although not
missed?
the last character named Walter Paisley that is
Not by a
played
long shot.
by
right.
the great Dick Miller.
No,
That's
he
so
plays a bunch.
strange. That is so strange that is that the deal, Drew? Did he somehow
He
manage?
that is a for some reason it became an ongoing thing where people would cast him in roles and they would name the character Walter Paisley after
Well,
the character. And
yeah, sometimes it would be an actual allusion to this character, and then other times it was just Walter or Paisley with the because they were just as an homage, I guess.
That is awesome. I love that. So okay, let's get our final thoughts, and if there's anything that we've missed, you're welcome. You're welcome to throw it in. So we started with Julia. Julia, I mean, again, if we've missed anything, let us know. But what are your final thoughts on A Bucket of Blood?
I mean, the only thing we didn't really, we didn't really talk about the score at all, just the kind of fun, jazzy, jazzy
Mm,
tunes that they have. But no, I think we covered a lot. I'm really fascinated at how broad this discussion got. Like how
yeah,
many different directions we were able to go into. So yeah, I think it's worth taking a look at and see if you see any other interesting themes that we didn't talk about, because I think just given how short it is and how quickly and cheaply it was done, it really does. There's a lot
yes,
to uncover or cover, as it were, with the clay. But yeah, I'm glad that we watched it, and I'm glad that we talked about it.
wonderful. Thank you, Tony. What about you?
Yeah, I'm glad we're covering it too, and again, it pairs really well with Little Shop of Horrors. I think kind of doing those back to back, that's the way to go.
Mm.
And I think it does cover. When you really get into it, it covers more than just an extended Dobie Gillis
Oh yeah,
episode, right? Like there's we talked a lot about it. What broken people and how him trying to fit in, all that stuff. Like you could, I know that there's already a remake, but you could also see a very extended indie remake, in the vein of, I don't know, maybe the closest thing would be that last Joker movie, right? Like here's this person that's set upon, and once they, what happens when they become an artist. And I think there are movies that cover this as well. It's interesting to see this Corman version of that, and the horror aspects of it, almost a Poe like aspect. In fact, Cat in the Wall, like there's little
yeah.
bits that are
No,
kind
that's
of
true.
like little tiny kind of Poe things that are throughout it, which is kind of funny that we have a whole Poe cycle, right?
Yeah,
That, I think that's kind of fascinating. It's a really short movie, and I think it's really interesting. I kind of wish I had seen it in black and white just to see how it's done, because there were, like I said, there were some obvious kind of weird color aspects to the color version that were
mm,
kind of not. I was wondering, like, oh yeah, I think this is colorized, but yeah, I'm glad we're covering it. I think it's interesting, and it's got the cast is doing it, doing all the roles really well. It's got the typical, we've got all your kind of cast of characters, that slightly nosy, well-meaning landlady, the crowd that's in the bar, all the stuff. I think it works pretty well. I dug it.
that's excellent. Thank you, Drew. I feel like you're our biggest Corman proponent, right? So what are your thoughts here?
I love this movie, and this discussion only made me love it more. And
Mm,
I found this discussion cathartic for some of my own anxieties as I go into quite possibly some of the biggest changes that will ever happen in my
mm.
life. So I thank you for allowing this podcast in my life and allowing us to discuss this movie, because in a way that is both helpful and therapeutic for me. But also I am glad that we put some of these ideas out about a movie that on face value is just a B movie. And I think that this is very much what our podcast is about, is perhaps digging out the deeper aspects of things that perhaps often would just be dismissed as ridiculous pulp.
Mm.
So thank you for the indulgence, and I'm looking forward to whatever our last look at the late great Roger Corman will be.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah, thank you very much. The last thing that I would mention here, and I've loved this conversation, but I was also thinking about the fact that this movie is 65 minutes long. And we talk about how in theory movies are getting longer, although there's lots of old films from the classic era that pushed 3 hours. So that happened when it happened. But there was a period when you could have a feature film that was barely over an hour also. In other words, people were ready to accept that both could be true. I wish that we were in that era now. I wish that you could release a film and go, you know what? We made this movie to be 65 minutes, and that's really all it needs. We could have added 20 extra minutes of subplots, but we decided not to because we just kind of felt like we weren't going to do that. I, that's really cool, and I kind of, I, I. I wish there were a place for that. Now, like, I guess there is a place for that on streaming. I mean, in theory, you could make a Netflix movie and it would be 65 minutes long. But I think because we all have accepted that a feature length film is, over 85 minutes or so at least, then you're not going to do it. I kind of wish that we did. That would be neat.
Well, for a long time, there's a classification of how long a movie has to be considered a theatrical length movie.
But in the streaming area, who cares?
Sure,
you could.
But there's still weird Hollywood laws. So.
No, you're right. And that's what that's a feature is a feature because that's how we define a feature. It is what it is. So yeah, a short film though is never an hour long. Like if you have a theatrical short, it's usually it never reaches up to 20. But so anyway, I just find that fascinating. I don't know where to go with it. But okay. So I guess it's time to get our endorsements. And I can't wait to hear what you guys are going to recommend. Julia, we're starting with you. What's been scaring you lately?
I mean, I'm not going to go too much into the new Alien movie, but it was very scary, and I liked it. I thought it was really cool. I have been watching with my kid, rewatching. I'm rewatching, and she's watching for the first time. Lost the first, and now we finished the first season. Now we're going into the second season. Since that show ended, I didn't love the last couple seasons. I forgot how very good it was in the first couple of seasons. It's just so good.
So much promise.
Yeah, right.
So much promise. I'm with you.
And so so we're about to get into the second season, which was also excellent. So that's what I've been watching. And now I've been watching the Democratic Convention, which is just a big party. So
yeah,
that's what's been on my viewing screen.
Wonderful. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I like Romulus. There's some aspects I didn't like, but I think it's done really well. And as far as like how it fits in, I was skeptical. I like my Alien movies, and I thought it had a lot going for it. I'm catching up on Umbrella Academy, and I'm also still enjoying weekly the Kaneki Man anime, like crazy wrestlers doing crazy things after. I think I've said it before, like growing up with this muscle man little characters and not knowing anything about them other than they were weird looking and cool. It's been kind of fun to revisit that. Other than that, we're starting to get more gigs with Deserts of Mars, and hopefully we'll have some more announcements. I've been doing more interviews and stuff too, so that keeping that rolling has been. That's probably why I don't have a ton of endorsements. Is I've been just trying to keep everything moving, being a band leader. Not trying to be a martyr on it, but there's a lot of moving parts to keeping a band rolling when you're the one forced to do it all. So it is awesome. I really believe in this new album, so working towards getting that out has been my big thing. So hopefully there'll be more news on that in the near future. And then I also say sketch up I think I can't remember if I posted or not, but the new Fantastic Fest, like the Fantastic Fest rollout has happened, so you can see what movies, and there's a lot of good movies. I'm sad because I'm gonna miss one of the days because there's a music festival during Fantastic Fest that I kind of need to go to at least one of the days. There's some bands from out of the country that I never get to see, so if you do go to Fantastic Fest and go to the lineup page, to the movies page, I would love to hear if anybody cares, like, hey, Tony, since you're going, I really want to know about this movie or that movie. I would love to hear, people's thoughts on that, because I do try to, I'm sure we'll do what we did, Jason, and, do some morning or evening, interviews to go, hey, this is what I've seen and this is what you should watch out for. So I look forward to that as well. If you go there, please let me know. I would love to hear about what people are interested in. There's a lot of good horror. In fact, there's an 8-film horror block that's going to be judged. It's like pick the top. Like, there's like a competition in a way, best horror and a few other things. So I think that's kind of cool. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you very much. Drew, what about you?
First of all, go to Indiegogo. The links are all over our Facebook page. They're all over my Facebook page. They're all over all of my social media. Back Halloween Man Entropy. You only have 20 days to do it. We have great perks. Yes, we have reached our financial goal, but that does not mean that you shouldn't show your support for independent comics and independent media. We talked some about gatekeeping during this episode. Well, crowdfunding is one of the ways an independent creator gets around gatekeeping in the entertainment industry. So this is your way of supporting that or showing that you're against that, I guess. So really, please, when you hear this, go to Indiegogo, back my crowdfund. Like I said, only 20 days left. And hey, right now, if you back, you'll get a bonus perk. So, which is a very cool sticker by John Golson that I posted pictures of today. So, also, I had COVID last week, so I watched a lot of horror movies. One of the movies that I enjoyed the most and thought was the most interesting was Jack the Ripper from 1958.
Really?
With the script by Hammer's famous script guy Jimmy Sangster. It's in black and white, but other than that, it has a lot of the touches that I think you would associate with Hammer while still being its own thing. Not a perfect movie, but definitely an interesting one when compared to other British horror movies of the era, and also just kind of looking at the trajectory of how the Ripper murders were portrayed in media.
What does Jack look like in that movie? Does he like wear the top hat and the cape?
He is the top hat and the cape, and it's London fog, and with a black medical bag. And apparently, this was one of the movies, if not the first movie, to lean very heavily into that visual. Which I find interesting. I don't know if that's true, but that was something I read. And I just, like I said, I found it interesting and grisly. Not entirely historically accurate, but that's not really why I was watching it anyway. So that one is on Prime, it's on Tubi, it's on Shudder, and probably on YouTube. It seems pretty easy to find if you want to find it.
Interesting. That sounds great. Thank you very much. Gosh, so I today was doing a lot of work and just spinning Blu-rays as I went. So today the stuff I watched was all from the Eurocrypt of Christopher Lee box set that Severin put out a couple of years ago. And I played some of the ones that I hadn't watched before. And one of them was Crypt of the Vampire, which is a 1964 black and white Spanish-Italian, which all of those words are right up my alley, adaptation of Carmilla, starring Christopher Lee. And it is really neat and stylish and everything. So gothic horror, black and white at its best, big creepy castles and lesbian vampires. You can't ask for anything better than that.
Severance does such a good job on that stuff.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I got Robo War and was it 2020 Texas Gladiators, and Robo War is the schlockiest, best Predator ripoff in Italian you've ever seen. In fact, I got Rain to watch it. She's doing Duolingo Italian, and I'd hooked her in just enough to where she ended up watching all of Robo War. And boy, is it schlocky, but boy, is it, because she was like listening for Italian. And it's cool because now we can see these films like, you know, like can watch the Italian. It's dubbed because that's what you do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, so but dubbed in Italian, you can now watch the amazingly VHS era friendly Robo War. And I also got the shirt for 2020 Texas Gladiators because that seems like a great shirt to wear on stage.
No, for sure.
If you're from Texas. But I haven't watched that. That's in 4K. But like Robo War, wow. Thank you, Severin, just for all of the just fantastic schlocky goodness that we love.
I should mention, by the way, also in that Severin package is a really memorable movie that was called The Pit and the Pendulum in its original version, but it was released in the United States as The Torture Chamber of Dr. Sadism. And the funny thing is, this is actually a really neat, moody, gothic horror film of the class in the classic sense, with Christopher Lee in it, playing Count Regula. But The Torture Chamber of Dr. Sadism is the
So
title, and I just never get tired of saying that title.
That's the kind of thing where for some people they're going, why the hell? Like you'll get a look of like, ugh, why would
Like,
you
how
watch
could
that?
you watch something
And
called...
then also I can imagine the Julias and Rains of the world going and just rolling their eyes and like, yes, of course you're watching The Torture Chamber of Dr. Sadism. Like how you hear that and hey, what are you watching? Oh, well, of course I'm watching The Torture Chamber of Dr. Sadism.
Torture
Oh,
Chamber of
sure,
Dr.
of course.
Sadism is one of those titles that if it wasn't actually the title of a movie, somebody would make it up as an example of titles of movies.
Yeah, it would be in a movie like, oh, have you seen Torture Chamber of Dr. Sadism? No, I don't watch that. Or like that's
What's the name, Jason, of that Marat Sade play? The whole
The
thing.
Assassination and Persecution of Jean-Paul Marat, as performed by the inmates of the Sheraton Asylum, also shortened as Marat Sade. And
Yeah.
oh yeah,
So
I'm sorry.
I watched.
As performed by the inmates of the Sheraton Asylum under the direction of the Marquis de Sade. Sorry.
There you
So
go.
it's yes.
Anyway, I watched that. So
there you go.
But it's shortened as Marat Sade. And I always thought that Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell actually owes a lot to Marat Sade. So anyway, all right, that's enough, because when we're talking about Marat Sade, we've definitely gone way off topic. So everybody be kind and excellent to one another. Imagine that everybody you run into could be having the worst day of their lives. Indicate to them that you care about them, and actually things would get better if they would watch The Torture Chamber of Dr. Sadism. And we'll talk to you when we're back shortly.
feel better,
soon.
Drew.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
definitely.
Yes, indeed.
Take care.
Bye, guys. Bye.